story time about how I broke up my best friend and his girlfriend. So it was our sophomore year in high school, and my best friend and I had known each other since we were like 8 years old. And I've always had a crush on him. Like, anytime he would get a girlfriend, I would try and break them up. And it would work. Well, our freshman year of high school, he started dating this one girl. Well, when he started dating her, he distanced himself from me because she didn't like how much time we were spending together. So a few months go by and my birthday's coming up. And mind you, within these past few months, we only seen each other like twice. And he had me blocked on all social media. Well, our parents were really good friends because we lived in the same cul-de-sac. So my mom invited him and his parents to my birthday party. So at the end of my party, my friends left and him and his parents stayed. And my parents really didn't care if I drank alcohol, so we had like a whole bottle of vodka to ourselves. So we're in the basement and we're taking shots together. Well, I got him super drunk and he fell asleep. And while he was sleeping, I went on his phone and I was able to get into his phone because he showed my fingerprint from when we were best friends. So I unblocked myself on all social medias, and there was an ottoman pushed against the couch, so while he was sleeping, I was able to go lay next to him. So while I was laying next to him, I took a few pictures of us, and I saved them in his camera roll. And I also sent one to his girlfriend. And it was about 1 a.m. Well, she opened it right away, and then she started going off and would not stop calling his phone. So after that, I turned his phone off. So he started to wake up, and then we started drinking more. And then we started fooling around. And while we were doing the nasty, I took a video. But he didn't see it because the phone was in front of me. And I had his girlfriend on Snapchat. So what did I do? I sent the motherfucking video to her. So the next day, obviously, he found out what happened. So then he came over to my house to talk to me. And I told him how I was upset that she was keeping him from me. So he broke up with her and started dating me.
If you guys want to talk about the worst mom in the history of moms, let's talk about the case of Diane Downs, who literally attempted to murder all 3 of her children in order to get a man to fall in love with her. So what exactly creates a monster like this? Well, Diane was born August 7th of 1955 in Phoenix, Arizona. Most of her life, she was pretty well behaved, but she started to rebel against her parents around high school. She cut her hair, had a really edgy phase, and got super boy crazy. And she started to date guys, which was way outside of her strict family's rules. And she fell in love with a boy named Steve Downs. They were high school sweethearts, but the second that college hit, they ended up going separate ways. He joined the Navy, and she went to Pacific Coast Baptist Bible College. And while they said that they would stay faithful to each other, she immediately started to hook up with other guys when she got there, and was expelled for her promiscuous behavior, and had to go back and live with her strict parents. Well, Steve came back, he forgave her, and they ended up running away together and getting married on November 13th of 1973. They were known to fight constantly. But in 1974, they had their first child together, making everything worse. Well, the marriage between her and Steve was beyond rocky, and having their first daughter together, Christy, did not help that improve. And 6 months after she was born, Diane ended up leaving Christy with her dad so she could join the Navy, which only lasted 3 weeks because she had to leave for severe blisters. They had another kid in 1976 named Cheryl, and Steve had a vasectomy immediately after this, but then Diane was pregnant again. So I guess you can imagine how that happened. She did not go through with the pregnancy, but her and Steve stayed together. Later, they moved to Mesa, Arizona, got new jobs, and Diane was having affairs with all of her new coworkers. Got pregnant again, kept this one, and had a boy named Danny. Steve actually still decided to stay for the sake of the kids, and wanted to remain a father figure to Danny. But eventually they ended up getting divorced in 1980. And this is when things got significantly more unstable. Diane started to bounce from relationship to relationship, moving in and out with different men, and then decided to become a surrogate in order to make money, even though she didn't pass all the psychiatric exams. Terrifying. But everything changed when she met a man named Nick. So this is when Diane met Robert Knickenbocker, who went by the name Nick. And she swore that this man was the love of her life. He had separated from his wife and describes the relationship as being intense and overwhelming. He eventually broke it off with her though because he didn't like kids. And this is when Diane became devastated and angry at her own children for getting in the way of her love. Her kids and her moved to Cottage Grove, Oregon, but still couldn't seem to forget Nick. She would obsessively write to him, and she really stopped paying attention to her kids' health. They often went hungry, went without coats in the cold. It was even said by a neighbor that Cheryl had mentioned that she was scared of her mom. Well, on Thursday, May 19th of 1983, everything went down. This story is from her perspective, by the way. They were coming home from a friend's house whenever Diane decided to take the kids on a scenic route. They did this often to explore. Hungry Like the Wolf started to play on the radio, and this is when she noticed a bushy-haired stranger signaling her over from the middle of the road. And at 10 p.m., with her kids asleep in the back of the car, she got out to talk to him, and he immediately demanded for her keys. So immediately after this stranger demanded for her keys, they had some sort of a struggle, in which he shoots all 3 of her kids and then shoots her in the left arm. In order to distract him, she pretends to throw her keys in the bush, and then uses the keys that are actually in her hand to turn on the car and then drive wildly like a lunatic to the hospital. So she pulls up to this hospital with her kids in bad condition, and all of the medical professionals that were there that night were shocked by her reactions. Her daughter Cheryl ended up passing away, and Danny and Christy were literally clinging to life. and she showed no emotion at all. Not only had she wrapped her own gun wound and not her kids', but she was worried about her new car having blood on it. She seemed relieved that Cheryl was dead, and was shocked when she found out that Danny, her 3-year-old child, had been paralyzed. And she was only shocked because he wasn't hit in the heart. Christy had had a stroke, but she was still alive, so currently Diane was the only witness. And a lot of moms actually felt for her during this time, and were even scared to leave with this man on the loose. But the public opinion didn't last for long. Even though the police were already suspicious of Diane, because she was the only witness, they had to rule out her story. So they got a composite sketch of the guy, and they ended up searching the whole area, where they only found some bullet casings. And her interviews during this time, if you guys have ever seen them, are so weird, definitely worth watching. This woman was eating up the attention so much, and she made this story into this whole overcoming thing where like she battled the patriarchy, ended up actually getting away from this man, like she's kind of the hero in the situation, but didn't show any emotion towards her kids. She went on the Oprah show and would crack jokes and have the crowd laughing. So the police ended up asking her to do a reenactment of this event, and it's truly one of the weirdest videos that you will ever see because she seems like she's having fun. Any mom being put through this would have found this to be extremely traumatic to relive this event. Instead, she's having fun, smirking, checking herself out in the car mirror, ends up hitting her arm on the steering wheel and says that almost hurt as bad as when, and cuts herself off. And it seems like she was about to say as when I shot myself. So after seeing this horrific reenactment, people just flat out are not believing her anymore, especially whenever she said this whole thing took place in like 5 to 10 seconds. And she did not take the criticism very well, literally stating, if I had shot my piece of paper and her throwing it into a fire, until eventually she feels safe enough to give it to the therapist. And once she did, it said her mom. The police went to go check Diane's house, found bullet casings that matched those at the crime scene, and also found a diary with intros about Robert, and talking about how Robert doesn't want kids. So then the police had their motive. Which Oprah even brought up to her that the man was now afraid of her because he thought she had shot her own kids. She tried to change her story a few more times, but she ended up getting arrested. So by the time it was time for her trial, she was pregnant again. She said she did it because she missed her kids and was lonely. But honestly, I feel like she did it just because she thought her sentence wouldn't be as bad. They ended up playing the song Hungry Like the Wolf in the courtroom, and Diane was jamming out to it. They showed the tapes, and she showed no emotion. They even did a doll reenactment for the jury to paint a picture. And then Christy testified, saying that her mom had actually stopped the car when she thought they were all asleep, went to the trunk, came around, and ended up shooting them. Cheryl first, Danny second, and her last. Wrapped herself in a towel and proceeded to drive slowly to the hospital. So ultimately, Diane was found guilty. And to this day, she is still in complete denial, thinking that she is still innocent. She ended up having the baby girl in jail, and she was immediately taken from her. This daughter was adopted, and Danny and Christy were actually adopted by one of the prosecutors on the case. Overall, it was a pretty happy ending. But Diane actually successfully broke out of jail for a little bit. If you want to hear that story, come over to my Instagram. It'll be on my middle reels tab.
Story time about how I got bullied my last year of high school by the most popular girl. Okay, so this is my story time. A lot of you requested one, but I'm also at the airport, so sorry for any noise. So most of my high school years were spent in Nicaragua, except for my last year of high school. You see, I booked a show in Miami, so I had to move to the US. I was also doing modeling, commercials, and a lot of radio. I enrolled in the local high school, and it was like literally culture shock for me. I had never experienced an American high school, American parties, or even like actually mingled with American kids. I was really shocked to see how like adult they were. For example, boys and girls were doing adult things. I was constantly being invited to parties where people were drinking, but I never actually went. So the most popular girl in school decided to befriend me in quotation marks. By the way, there were so many times where I spent lunch in the bathroom like Caddy from Mean Girls. It was like Mean Girls, but real life. So this popular girl, she was also a model, and we kind of bonded over that. But behind my back, she had a bet to see which boy would take me to prom. She wanted to see how far this boy could get with me, if you know what I mean. So this popular girl who befriended me had a bet with boys to see which one would take me to prom, specifically because she wanted to see how far they would get with me on prom night, if you know what I mean. I kept saying no to every. I was the pretty girl, and then she was the model in school. I literally just walked away from her. I went to prom with no date, which was so fun. I graduated, and then I kept working. Guess who slid into my DMs a few weeks ago asking to hang out? That's right, the popular girl. I think she must have seen my TikTok or something. Should I actually go out with her and tell her what I think, or should I just leave her on red? You guys decide.
I was pregnant with my brother's baby and didn't know. So I was 16 years old back then. Keep in mind, I wasn't educated as I was now. When I was younger, I always felt like there was some missing part of me. I don't know why, but I just did. I always dreamed of having a twin brother or at least another sibling, but it just never occurred to me. So I asked my mom one day if I could have a sibling, and she said then best friends from the course of freshman year to sophomore year. Everyone thought we were siblings. We laughed at the idea, but never officially said if we did or not. So one day, we were at a friend's party and we decided to play spin the bottle. He spinned it and it pointed at me, so we had to go into the closet and kiss. So he spun the bottle and it landed on me. We both laughed at the level. We decided we were ready for intercourse and did our thing. We used protection, of course, nothing crazy. So one day, out of nowhere, I started feeling nauseous and got word cravings. I told him how I was feeling and how bad it was. He thought I might have been pregnant. So we got a pregnancy test and it was positive. We freaked out because we did it with a condom for the first time. We wanted to keep it because I was pro-life and we thought we were so in love, so we obviously had to tell our parents. So we set a date to meet both of our parents and say that we were pregnant. We did it first with Michael's parents and they were pretty accepting. They said they helped financially, but I would have to drop out of school and I had no issue with it. So next was my mom. And I was nervous, but I wanted to do it. So as soon as I got to the front door, my mom opened the door and looked shocked. She then looked mad, dragged me in by the arm and slammed the door. She yelled and questioned why I was with him, and I said that he was my boyfriend. My mom said I couldn't date him anymore. I questioned her and she wouldn't budge. So I told her I was pregnant right then and there. I thought maybe she'd tell me why. She looked at me in shock and broke down in front of me. I asked her what was wrong and she said that it was my brother. She said she gave him away long ago when I was born because she couldn't afford the both of us and named him Michael. She told me I had to have an abortion because the baby would become deformed. And if I didn't, she'd kick me out of the house. I cried and cried. One day, she took me out of school and brought me to Planned Parenthood. She forced me to have an abortion. I was so heartbroken. I told Michael we are brother and sister and we broke up but are still friends. We'll tell his parents we are related after we finish high school. Follow for more story times and follow my Instagram as well. Click the link in my bio for $50 for Roblox.